first thing, as always, thank our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, giving us our health and strength and all the wonderful blessings that we have in this nation. It's because of Him that we're free. And so we give Him thanks first and foremost. My name is Mark Robinson, and I became famous for talking. And I continue to become famous for talking. Seems like talking has become the thing that I do now. When my wife and I first met, someone told me that my wife, her mom asked her, hey, the young man that you brought by here to meet me, he's a wonderful young man. God, she sure does talk a lot. She really did say that. You never could have realized that talking would change our lives like it has. True story, guys. True story. We talk about God. God has got I don't know if He's got a funny sense of humor or what it is, but God his miracles just don't ever cease to amaze me. I've never taken a speech class, never. I never was trained on how to speak, never practiced. I'm going to tell you the story about how I came into the knowledge that I had, some ability when it came to public speaking. When I was in the 9th grade, I took English. I took what was called high English. Now, I don't know how in the world a low-grade student like me ended up in high English. But I guess one of the requirements of being in the English class is speaking English, and I was pretty good at it, because I did tell y'all, I talk a lot. So I guess that's how I ended up in high English, but we had to give a speech in 9th grade. We used to go 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That was junior high back in those days. And we had to give a speech in 9th grade. You were required to give a speech in front of your class in what they call high English. And so, many of the students in the class, every day I'd see them telling the teacher, her name was Miss Lineberry, Miss Lineberry, I'm going to go to the library and go practice my speech. And I'd see them standing at the back of the class practicing. And I was sitting there looking at them thinking, wow, that's a lot of effort to go and to talking. We do that all the time at home. And so, I know that this thing is serious. And that, you got to prepare for this thing. Because you got to give it and you got to pass it in order to pass the 9th grade. So this is a serious thing. And so, I really put my nose to the grindstone. And the night before I was due to give my speech, I wrote my speech. So I wrote my speech the night before. As a matter of fact, I told my mom, I said, Mom, I need some 5x9 note cards. She said, for what? I said, I got to give a speech tomorrow. So I remember going to Extra Drug, getting some 5x9 note cards or whatever they are. 5x3, is that what it is? 5x3 note cards. And I got those note cards and I came home and I wrote my speech the night before. I wrote it, I looked at it, I said, yes, this is good. I see a C in my future. And so I took those note cards to school. The next day I wore a little necktie that I had learned how to tie, thanks to a friend of mine I had met, an individual named Johnny Henderson, who was a National Guardsman. He taught me how to tie a necktie. And I went to school with that necktie on, and when it was my turn in that class, I got up to deliver my speech because I was ready to get my seat. So I stood up, I walked up to the podium with those note cards that I had not read since the night before. I set them on that podium, and I started reading off those note cards. And when I got to the end of those note cards and got to the end of my speech and finally looked up at the class, I nearly got a standing ovation. The class went crazy. They couldn't believe it. And they said, after it was over, you got a critique from your class members. And they all talked about how wonderful this speech that I'd written the night before was. And I was thinking to myself, who in the world are they talking about? Surely to God they're not talking about me. And this one girl I remember in particular said it was great. The only thing you need to do is work on your eye contact. And after she said that, they gave me another round of applause. And I looked and I was like, I'm not really sure what happened here. But I'll take it. And I sat down. But before I left, the teacher stopped me. And she looked at me and she said, that was absolutely fantastic. She said, how long have you been practicing that speech? And I was raised not to tell a fib, especially not to a teacher, and I told her I didn't practice that speech at all. And she said, well, how long did it take you to write it? And again, I told her the truth. I said, I actually just wrote it last night. And she looked at me with her mouth wide open and said, do you know that if you practice, if you come out to school and practice with me, I think you can win this entire speech contest. Because those things were related to a larger speech contest throughout the city. The folks who won at the classroom level went to the school level, then from the school level to the city. Well, I did that. I practiced with her. And I went to the school. I won at the classroom level. And then I went to the school level. And then I went on to the city level where I competed. And I remember the night I competed. I stood there and I gave that speech, and I'd been practicing at this point. And I was able to almost give the speech without even looking down at the nose parts. And I was looking down at the audience, and I could see them nodding in approval. And when I got done, I indeed got a standing ovation from the crowd. I sat down and I was very proud of myself. And I was almost assured that I was going to win this thing. However, I did not. I lost. That night, I had my first foray into politics. I lost to the mayor's son. Yeah. And I distinctly remember walking out of the building with my mom with me. And she said, they did you, Gertie. They knew you should have won that. Mayor's son wasn't in that, you would have won it. Then my teacher came up, she said the same thing, and I remember this great big guy that shooting like he had one too many, slapped me on the back and said, boy, you sure gave a good speech. If it wasn't for the mayor's son, you'd have took that thing home. Well, I tell the story to say this. At the end of the year, I got my yearbook. And that teacher, Miss Lineberry, I went to her and I had her sign it. And I remember the day I had her sign it. It was actually the last day, my last day there at that school at Minden Hall Junior High School. I handed her that book standing in the hallway and she signed it, and I took it from her. And when I got on the bus, I read what she wrote in that book under her picture. And it said, Dear Mark, have a great time, have a great summer, and good luck in high school. And then she said, I don't know what you plan on doing in the future, but I'm sure whatever it is, it will include public speaking. Those words are almost prophetic. And there have been many people like that in my life since then who have spoken almost prophecy into my life. You know, my mom used to tell me all the time that I was going to grow up to be a preacher. I think she'd be shocked now to find me as a politician. But anybody that knows me knows that I'm more preacher than politician. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm more servant than I am politician. The reason why I bring that story up is this. When I look back at my life and I look at people who have challenged me to be better. I look at my best friend Wayne Campbell, who challenged me to be better when he invited me to go to church one night and I ended up getting saved. And then he ended up challenging me again when I made a snide comment about Rush Limbaugh. I called Rush Limbaugh a racist. This is before I was politically aware. My friend asked me, how do you know Rush Limbaugh's a racist? And I told him, I said, he said, do you watch his, you listen to his radio program? I said, no. He said, do you read his books? I said, no. He said, do you know the man? I said, no. He said, well, that's how I charge of making somebody call him a racist and you don't know him. I said, well, Wayne, everyone on television says he's a racist. All those people aren't lying. He challenged me again and he said, you know, you told me one time that the people on television say that black people don't take care of their children, are thieves and liars. And you said that they lie about black people on television. He said, television's lying about black people. How do you know they're not lying about Rush Limbaugh? He was challenging me to think better, to think for myself. And so I did. I went out, actually not to do it to think so much for myself. I was trying to prove him wrong, guys. And I went out and I bought Rush Limbaugh's book, The Way Things Ought to Be. And I started reading it. It's at Clarksville Furniture sitting on my bunk during the break time when I started reading that book. And I didn't get past the 5th or 6th page before I came to a shocking revelation. Rush Limbaugh was not a racist. Rush Limbaugh was me. Because Rush Limbaugh, in the first few lines of that book, spoke words that I had been thinking my entire life. I did not become a conservative at that moment. I discovered that I had always been a conservative. And say that again, and mention all those things for this. You know, we sit in front of the television and we look, we watch CNN, ABC, CBS. Oh yeah, something down, all y'all in the nod y'all's ear. Let me ask you a question. How y'all know they lying if you ain't looking at them? Y'all know you can't, I can't help but sometimes turn over there and see what they're saying. What they lying about now? We've seen them. We don't necessarily believe them. We don't wake up and that's the first thing on our mind. But we've all seen it. We've seen CBS. We've seen ABC, CNN. We see WRAL. We really are liberal. See the News and Observer, the N and O, nonsense and oddities. We see it. We see what looks like vast power wrapped up in those entities. You know, we see their beautiful reporters sitting behind the desk, all shined up and pretty, reading their little notes, you know, mindless, trying to brainwash the people. We see their satellite trucks out on the scene, out on, the special reports. We see Hollywood with all its millions and all its minions. Then we look at the federal government and we see the people who oppose people like Congressman Bud every day in Washington. We see all their millions of dollars and we see the Biden administration and all the things that they're doing, and we look and we say, my God, how in the world can we combat all this? Not only do they have sway over our federal government now, not only do they have sway over many of our largest states in this nation, but they have the news media, they have Hollywood, they have all of this power and all this money. What in the world can we do? How in the world can we fight back against this? That's what we need to do. Like my buddy Wayne Campbell is. We need to challenge each other. We need to challenge each other to think better, to believe better, to believe in ourselves. You see, when I was telling you that story about me giving that speech in the 9th grade, when God formed me in my mother's womb, He knew that in the 9th grade, Mark Robinson is going to have to give a speech in that class. And in that 9th grade class, that is where I'm going to set into motion the things that I want in his life. He already knew that. It was ordained from him from the beginning. He had already put what I needed to succeed in my life inside of me. And the first time it came out was in that 9th grade class at Linden Hall Junior High School. And the first person who affirmed it was that teacher, Miss Lyndale. And whether she knew it or not, she spoke prophecy over me by those words she scribbled in that yearbook. Folks, that's what we need to start doing with each other. That's what we need to start doing with our children. We need to start speaking life over our children, speaking prophecy over our children. And we need to do the same thing to this nation today. See, because all is not lost. There is a solution to every problem that we face. There is a solution. You look at the issue right now of, let's just pick one. Here's a problem for you. I don't know if this is a problem for you, but guys, for many years, I dreamed of having a Chevy Silverado Z71 trademarks. Can I get a witness? Somebody out there know what I'm talking about this morning. A Chevrolet Silverado Z71 trail box. I could literally see myself driving down the street with my hat turned backwards. Window rolled down. Well, you know, I was bound and determined. I said, one day I'm going to have one of those trucks. Thank be to God, my wife allowed me to buy one. Married men, they know that. The guys ain't married yet. This guy here, he ain't married yet. You'll learn. That don't come in the house if mama don't say yes. If it does, you're in trouble. So I get this truck and I'm like, yeah, I get it. But here it is. The other day I pulled up to the gas pump. Pulled up to pump 3. And I got $10 in gas. Went inside and said, give me $10 on pump number 3. The guy at the counter looked at me and said, 10 on 3 in that truck? Where you going? Pump 4? Seriously. We had to fill that truck up about a week ago. $87.78. Would have cost me half of that last year. $87 under a President Biden would have cost me half of that under a President Trump. Under energy independence, it would have cost me half of that. Then you look at this issue with our border. Tired of people saying we got a crisis at the border. We don't have a crisis at the border. We have an invasion going on at our border. It needs to be stopped quick, faster than a hurry, but it's not going to be under a President Biden and with a House and Senate under control of communists. And yes, I call them communists because that's what they are. No more Democrats left in Washington, D.C. Might be 1 or 2. The rest of them are either socialists or communists, and one is just as bad as the other. But we have an invasion going on under President Biden. Under President Trump, that border was secure. Now, under President Trump, the border was secure. But now CNN and ABC were about to lose their minds. The president was fighting for the sovereignty of this country, and they were about to lose their minds, couldn't be quiet about it. Hated what he was doing. Even though it was keeping me and you and this nation safe, they hated it. Now under President Biden, we got people coming in about hundreds of thousands. God knows who it is. Because here it is. Here's the next thing. Look at that debacle that happened over in Afghanistan. For 20 years, we've been fighting the Taliban in Afghanistan. And under President Trump, Afghanistan was quiet. Didn't hear a peep out of it. The Taliban knew there was a strong man in office that if they got out of line, was going to be trouble if they got out of line. And then we got an incompetent, some might say incompetent man in the White House. I didn't say that, guys. The Italians said that. I did not say that man was incompetent. That was the Italians. That's their room to talk to them. Right-wing watch. I did not start that room. The Italians started that room. But under President Biden, not only did he let the country fall, we rearmed our enemies. And you think about this. Those arms that they got, those night vision goggles, those fully automatic M1 rifles, all those explosives they might got their hands on. They should find their way around the globe and want to find their way into this country. How do you think they're going to come? You think they're going to come through LaGuardia? No, sir. No, ma'am. They're going to come right through that southern border because it's wide open under a President Biden. You see how all this works together? These are the problems we're facing. Facing another problem when you go to the grocery store. You know, I know it's not, it might be, it's probably pretty easy to see. Guys, I like bacon. I like bacon on white bread with cheese and egg. It's delicious. looking around, y'all act like y'all don't like bacon. I'm at the wrong crowd. There was a guy last night that I mentioned bacon, he about jumped out of his seat. Clapping, he was like, yes, bacon. But I like bacon. The other day I went to go buy bacon at the grocery store because my wife told me to. And I get there and normally I pay $4.99 for a pack of bacon. $5.99 for a pack of bacon. Not anymore. $9.99, $10.99, some places $11.99 for a pound of bacon under President Joe Biden. $45, $50, $60, $70 for a turkey under President Joe Biden. Everything that you pay for is through the roof now under President Biden. You look at this whole thing that he talked about giving. Woo, I get hot just thinking about it. Look at what I'm talking about. Here you go, Dave Butler, get a picture of this. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Yeah, Dave, here you go. See, when you do real work, Dave, when you do more than just punch buttons on Twitter, you get a little hot, you get sweaty, but you wouldn't know nothing about that. Right wing watch, that's Dave Butler, D.B. Butler. Write that down, think your pencil. So, everything that you pay for now, it's through the roof. It's absolutely through the roof under President Biden. We look at all these things and we get upset. We don't know what we can do. We feel discouraged. We feel lonely. We feel by ourselves. More than anything, we feel helpless. We feel helpless because we're looking for a solution. We want someone to stand up and do something about this. That's why we were so energized about President Trump, because finally it seemed like we had somebody who wasn't interested in smoking a pipe, crossing their legs and saying, can we talk about this? See, she got that. That's what I like. I like people who get it. You understand what I mean? You've worked with someone like that. No matter what's going on, the guy, they can be in the camp shooting at you, and he goes, now come on, let's talk about this. Finally, we had someone who was willing to stand up and fight for us. Fight for this nation. Put America first. Tell the rest of the world that I am not the world's president. I am the United States president, and America will come first. We don't want to be supreme to anyone. We don't want to push anybody down. We don't want to move anybody out of the way. But we will raise up the United States. And we will make sure that anytime we do anything, it will be for the benefit of this nation. Not for the UN, not for some global warming summit, but for the people of this nation. And that's why we like President Trump so much. Because he put us first, and he put America first. Because he knew God was greater than government. And his faith is the way to achieve things. Conservatism gets things done, and so we look towards President Trump to fight those battles. But here it is. President Trump is not the solution. He's not the solution. A lot of people feel the same way about President Trump that they feel about me. You either love the man or you hate him. You guys love me. There's some people out there that don't think so well of me. Don't really care. It's their problem. When they come around to thinking right, they'll love me. But as much as people love me, as much as people shake my hand and tell me thank you for the work I'm doing, I'm not the solution either. I'm not the solution. Congressman Bud has done great work in Washington, D.C. He returns to D.C. as a senator. I have no doubt he'll do great work again. But Congressman Bud is not the solution. Nor is any other elected official in this state or in this nation. They are not the solution. You know who the solution is? You are. You are the solution. You are the solution. When you sit there looking at the television and you see those bad reports, you see those high prices, you see that debacle in Afghanistan, you see that invasion at the border, see those high gas prices, You see Joe Biden on television mumbling again and again and again. The next time it happens, stop yourself. Turn that television off. See, I told you, this lady right here gets it. Me and her are on the same wavelength. Turn that television off and walk and go find the nearest mirror. Go find the nearest mirror. And in that mirror, again, you will find the solution. Look in that mirror and remind yourself of some things. What is it that you need to remind yourself of? Number one thing you need to remind yourself of is who you are. Who you are. See, the news media loves to tell us that we're a bunch of right-wing idiots who didn't go to school long enough and didn't get enough letters put behind our name and don't have enough of them little funny-looking charts on the wall with all that fancy calligraphy on them. So you're not smart enough to understand why we want to put pornography in your schools. You're not smart enough to catch on to that concept. You're not smart enough. We're putting these award-winning pornography books in your schools so your children can learn something that you don't understand because you are not smart enough. When they tell you, no, your children can't go to school in XYZ school, they have to go here. They're telling you that because they're telling you that you are not smart enough. You look in that mirror, you need to remind yourself of who you are. And you need to remind yourself that you are smart enough. That you're smarter than anyone else on this planet when it comes to what your children need and what you need to give them, and where you can guide them in the future. You need to remind yourself that you are an American. And American ingenuity is second to none in this nation. Second to none in this nation. And that ingenuity lies in you, so you need to remind yourself that you're smart enough and you're good enough. Another thing they try to do that you need to remind yourself of is where you came from. Where you came from. Who you are. Who are your forefathers? See, CNN and Chapel Hill and a couple of these other places, they love to tell you that your forefathers were a bunch of slave-driving racists who built a nation built on slavery and bigotry and sexism and religious idolatry. Because of that, their images should be torn down. And we should forget about where we came from, because where we came from was a bad place. We all know that's not true. And as you look at yourself in that mirror, you need to remind yourself. You need to remind yourself of who you came from. And who is it that you came from? You didn't come from some weak, ineffective people. You didn't come from a people who are afraid. You came from a bunch of barefoot farmers who stood on a hill called Bunker Hill, faced off against the most powerful army on earth for a concept called independence that folks barely understood, but knew was good. You were there. Before you were placed in your mother's wombs, you were there. All of us were there. That is our bloodline. That is who we are. Stand firm as the children of those men who stood on that hill. Now, somebody challenged me and said, I don't know if you could be any of their children. I don't know if there was any black folks up there. Don't know if you know this or not, but right now we're all kind of mixed up, so I'm sure somewhere along the line, somebody was on Bunker Hill. We probably done crossed paths somewhere. Because you know, it really doesn't matter what color you are in this country. America is not a color. The only colors of America are red, white, and blue. Those colors can flow through the veins of anyone who is willing to stand up and live by our creed that all men are created equal. The color doesn't matter. Content of character is what matters. That's who you are when you look in that mirror, and that's where you came from. The other thing you need to look at when you look in that mirror is you need to realize not only where you came from, but whose you are. Now that's proper English. I know right-wing watchers probably gonna say, Lieutenant Governor, that's proper English. He said who you are. Whose you are. Meaning, whose are you? Who created you? And why? Found a document that says, we hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men are created equal. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, I don't know about you, but the only Creator I know is God Almighty, His Son, Jesus Christ. That's who you are. You see it in Him. He doesn't always pick. Matter of fact, I don't ever remember God ever picking the perfect one. It seems like God shoves the perfect ones aside. Excuse me, you're not messed up enough to give me any glory. Let me find this messed up one over here. Because when this here happens, I want folks to know it wasn't this person, it was me. See, I can give you that testimony myself. There's no way in the world the left can explain my story. I think that's part of the reason why they despise me so much. Because I've absolutely shattered their mold. I'm black. Y'all didn't know I'm black. I'm black. I grew up poor. I'm a Christian. I'm a conservative. Guys, I don't even have a college degree. My wife hates it when I say it. But I don't even have a college degree. I've never even been to Yale. I tell you the truth, guys, I don't even really know where Yale is. Somewhere that way. I don't know where it is. And I don't really care. Because of all those things, they can't explain how in the world did this poor Negro who doesn't have an education, how in the world did he become lieutenant governor? He's not speaking any of the so-called prim and proper language that we speak in our universities. He's not following any of the protocols. How did he get there? How in the world can this man succeed when he has done the exact opposite of everything every political expert has ever said? How in the world does he go from a factory worker to be a lieutenant governor? The answer is simple. I was not created by a university. I was not created by some political pundit. And I was not created by some political scholar. I was created by God Almighty for this time, right now, to do what I'm doing. Because you refuse to believe in Him. Because you don't understand me. You are confused when you look at me. You are confused. Because you don't understand His will and you don't understand His way. I'm telling you guys, we need to remember who we are under God. And we need to remember that when folks besmirch you, because I remember one time when I was on the funny papers. Now, the funny papers, that's why I call social media. Follow me. So if I say the funny papers, I mean Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the TikTok, all that stuff. Oh, wait a minute. TikTok. It's not the TikTok, it's TikTok. My staff gets me every time I say the TikTok. TikTok. Those things I call them the funny papers. I was on Facebook one time. Somebody made a comment on one of my posts and said, what are you going to do about whatever it is I was talking about? I said, you can't do anything about it. You're just one old fat bald guy. Being followed by a bunch of old, dumb, fat, drunken rednecks. I think that was almost exactly what they said. And I don't even think I responded to that person. I kind of just looked at him and I just kind of let him go by it. Comments like that on social media don't mean anything to me. Because most of the time when people make comments like that on social media, it's because they don't have anything intelligent to say, to add to the conversation. So just go on by. But I did think to myself, wow, that person certainly doesn't understand our God. Because you look at the people that he picked to do the things that was done under his name, to set the standards that we live under now, to set those examples of how God can save you. Not only just save your soul, save your mortal body on earth. Come to your rescue. First one that comes to mind for me is Moses. Moses, y'all know Moses. Moses got chased by Pharaoh's army. The whole Egyptian army chased Moses to the Red Sea. Moses gets to the Red Sea, and he's standing there, and here comes Pharaoh's army. And then the Israelites, they all start lamenting to Moses, you brought us all the way out here, now what are we going to do? There's Pharaoh and his army, we're going to be killed. And Moses was an old man. An old man with a stick. Every time I say that, it amazes me. This is an old man with a stick facing the most powerful army on earth. When you think about that, and this ain't no fairy tale. This really happened. I don't care what the folks at the divinity school at some college said. This is a real story. Was not real, my father would not have put it in his word. It's not an allegory. Moses, that old man with that stick, stood at the Red Sea and turned around to those Israelites and declared that after this day you will see that army no more. And that old man raised that stick up and stuck it into the Red Sea. The Red Sea opened up. Moses and the Israelites walked through. And when the army of Pharaoh followed, he waved that stick back over that sea and it closed up. And to this day, that Egyptian army has not been seen. Hide or hair of, because of an old man with a stick who stood at the sea. He beat an entire army. How did he beat that army? He beat that army because he knew who he was fighting for, and he knew who was fighting for him. And he was willing to stand. And he was willing to make a miracle happen. A miracle happened in God's name. And then we look at that little boy, Davie, standing against Goliath. Goliath standing there with all his armor on, his spear. You know, I would imagine that seemed about as daunting of a task for him to stand in front of Goliath as it is for us to stand in front of news meetings sometimes when they come after us because they don't like things that we've seen or don't like the stand that we've taken. It's a daunting task, but David did it. And you know, I love the passage in the Bible that David says when he's standing in front of Goliath. He tells Goliath, this little boy, he's a boy. The Bible describes him as a ruddy-faced boy. Tells this giant, this warrior, this champion of the army, tells him, not only is he going to defeat him, but he's going to take his head. Not only is he going to take his head, he's going to feed his carcass to the birds so that the birds will know that there is a God in heaven and that David serves him. Sure enough, by the end of that day, Goliath lay dead and David stood victorious. And why? Because David knew who he was fighting for, and he knew who was fighting for him. And then there's those three Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I think the story on that was the king had told them, said something in fact, if you don't come down here and get a shot in your arm, told them that if you don't fall out on your knees when the music plays, I'm going to throw you in this furnace. And I love what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said because they stood up to the king. Now imagine that. Three little boys standing up to a king. Told him, government is right now. People need to stop kneeling down to everything, backing down to everything, capitulating to everything, and start standing up for God, and start standing up for the principles that built this nation. Those boys would do it. They told them, you can throw us in that furnace if you want to, because God is able to save us. And here's the best part of it. They said, even if he does not, we still won't bow, because we know he is worthy and he is able. They threw him in and not a hair on him was singed. So you have 4 boys, an old man, all standing against the impossible, but all standing with God on their side. Now I want you to compare those stories to the stories of this nation. I want you to compare those to the stories of this nation. Compare their story to those folks I mentioned, them barefoot patriots at Bunker Hill. Compare their story to them. Men who on earth were willing to stand up for you. Those men were standing on that hill for you. They weren't standing on that hill to fight for any kind of possessions. They were fighting for a freedom that was not yet realized, that lives now in you. And they did it because they knew who they were fighting for, and they knew who was fighting with them. They had enough courage, and they had enough strength, and they had enough power, and they had enough faith to fight for something that they did not yet have in their hands. They would not capitulate. You look at those men and women, or those men in places like Fredericksburg. I don't know how many of y'all know about Fredericksburg. Fredericksburg was a terrible loss for the Union Army. Said it was so bad that Fredericksburg, they stacked their dead on top of one another to guard themselves from Confederate bullets. In the darkest days of that Civil War, that first Republican President Abraham Lincoln didn't go beseech his generals to come in for a new strategy. He didn't go off and beseech the help of some self-help guru. Abraham Lincoln called for the whole nation to fall on its knees and pray for the tide to turn in this war. And those young men who would go off to go fight to put this nation back together and end the awful institution of slavery would not capitulate and did not capitulate. They won stunning victories like the Battle of Gettysburg, and then fought on towards the victory at Appomattox. They did it because of their faith and because of their courage. Same type of faith and courage that we see in the words of our Father. And then you look at World War II. Look at this man sitting back here. Think about what he must have went through. Young man that left his home right here in North Carolina. Kissed his mom and daddy goodbye, probably at the train station or the bus station. Got on that bus and got on that train, and his mom and daddy watched him ride away, not knowing whether they were going to see him. Where does that kind of strength come from? You can't make that kind of strength in Hollywood with the John Wayne movie. You can't make that kind of strength by listening to Dr. Phil or Oprah Winfrey. Certainly can't do it there. That kind of strength comes from a faith that comes straight from our God. Same God that has built this nation and sustained her through all her troubles. Young men like that went off to go fight to make sure our freedom was secure. They took with them the knowledge that millions of people were back at home on their knees beseeching the Almighty to ensure that freedom would live through what they would go through. Sitting there at the table and I was thinking, there's a German soldier somewhere laying in his grave probably that laid hands on that young man in an attempt to stifle our freedom. But because God is good, he's still sitting right there. He said what he said about pledging allegiance. When you pledge allegiance and you look at that flag, you thank God for that flag, and you thank God for that freedom. You also need to thank God for men like that. We have been blessed in this nation to have people to leave everything that they love for a greater cause. Just like those patriarchs in our Bible. Then you look at Korea. You look at Vietnam, where men and women went off to go fight the communists on foreign shores, so we would not have to fight them here. Look at our wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and Desert Storm, where again young men and women would go off and go fight so that we could fight the enemy there instead of fighting them on the streets here. The bottom line is that the same stories of victory that we've seen in the Bible have been the same stories that we have seen of victory in this nation, because people of faith have always stood up at tough times to see us through. Well, guess what? That person that I told you to look at in the mirror, you, me, it's our turn now. This man's done his duty. He's done his time. He served us well. Now it's our turn. This nation is in trouble, folks. It's in trouble. When you can put pornography in schools and open the border and let people pour through by the hundreds of thousands and shut down our pipeline while allowing foreign nations to sell all the oil to us they want to. When prices are so out of control that you can barely feed your family, this nation is in trouble. And it's crying out not for me, not for Congressman Bud. It's crying out for you. Stand up and give yourself the same way someone gave, to give you the freedom that you have. And so, tonight I challenge each and every one of you to stand up, stand together. Look at that person in the mirror and remind them of who you are. Number one, you are a child of God, made in his image, and made for this moment. If it was not so, you would not have been born at the time you were. You were made for this moment in history. It is your turn. It's time for us to stand up, folks. Stand up and be unafraid. You know, the left is not afraid at all. They stand up and lie all day long. They will lie some more, they lie more than that thing in my hallway I almost trip over every day when I come in. You need to get ready. That what you call that runner laying out on the floor. If I would come in with a cast on, blame her for putting that runner. Folks lie more than that thing. Here we are with the truth, and we try to remain silent. Cannot remain silent anymore, folks. The enemy is not only inside the lie, they are inside the headquarters. They're running the show, and they're running it straight into the ground. So it's time for each and every one of us to get involved. It's time for each and every one of us to remember we all have something to add. Everyone. We all have something to add. And what you have to add was placed in you by God when you were in your womb for this moment. Use that talent. Use your time to help save freedom in this state, in this nation. The one thing I don't ever want to have to do is look at my grandchildren or their children. Have them look at me and say, you know, I read in the book somewhere where it said you used to be able to go to school wherever you wanted to go to school. And you used to be able to go down and buy a rifle or a shotgun or a pistol whenever you wanted to. I remember when we could walk the streets because the police officers had the streets safe. And I remember when the nation was safe because the veterans had the country safe. I remember back when people could fight against abortion. I remember when people could raise their voices up freely. Why is it that you can do that and now I can't? Why don't I have the same freedom that you have? That is literally like a nightmare to me. And I don't intend for it to happen. And I know you don't either. And if you don't want to, if you don't want it to, then tonight you need to decide that it is your turn. It is your turn to stand up and be the warrior in this nation that saves freedom from future generations. It is our time, folks. It is our time to stand up and declare the truth. It is our time to stand up and push back. It is our time to have our voices heard. And not only heard, it is our time to make sure that conservatism, yes, conservatism, Conservative Republican policies rule this state and nation because those policies build states and nations. Those on the left destroy it. Only if you raise your voice, only if you get involved, and only if I get involved with you, and only if we do it as a team can we make it happen. So that's my challenge for you tonight. You leave here tonight, you go home and you get in that mirror and you look at yourself and you remind yourself of who you are. And you think about the strength that is in you, and let's use that strength, all of us, to fight hard for this nation and its freedom. God gave it to it. And I'd be damned if I'm going to let any leftist from anywhere take it from me. Not without a fight that night. Let's all stand strong in who we are, what we are, and whose we are. Let's stand strong as Republicans, as Americans, and Christians. Let's save freedom for future generations. God bless you all. God bless this great county, and God bless